the Mass Rider Capital worldwide headquarters in Lubbock, Texas, this is Heights of Victory, a program showcasing businesses and leaders from across the region. You can expect to hear stories of success with bouts of adversity and resilience, which when paired with hard work and a little West Texas grit, culminate in the heights of victory. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Heights of Victory. I'm Jeff Horn, CEO of Mass Rider Capital, and we're proud to present our fifth episode today. Got a great gentleman here with me today. Another Monterey baseball player, Mark Griffin, joins us here. Known Mark a long time, lifelong Lubbockite. Been involved in a big time, business with Rip Griffin companies, and then transitioned to family office, and just a terrific record of service with a lot of different organizations, and can't wait to visit with him today. So without further ado, Mark, welcome to the Heights of Victory today.
Jeff, thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're glad to get you here and visit with you and pin you down for a few minutes, and go over everything. But, we like to start off with history of and your experience and all of those types of things. And so you're a Lubbock guy through and through, raised and here in West Texas. Share a little bit about your family and what it was like to grow up here, and
Sure.
what it was like to be a young Mark Griffin.
Well, it was, I would say it was interesting, Jeff. My mom and dad were both, my dad was born in Matador, my mom in O'Donnell, and they met here at Tech. And they're just out of school and out of the service for my dad when I came along. I had an older brother and three younger sisters, and we were all engaged in the business. My dad had a little filling station that he built into kind of a truck stop group, and we worked at the truck stop. That's all we knew how to do. And I got to say a word about my mom, though, because with 5 kids, that was her life. And meal on the table 3 times a day, dessert always after dinner, every day. And with a family that size, we really couldn't go out to eat. They couldn't afford the reputational risk of taking us out in public. And so because we had a restaurant at our truck stop, that's where we would go eat Sunday lunch. And I'll never forget those days. And I know why my dad did it, to control the environment, but the price was right too.
Yeah.
And so we grew up in that. We didn't know any better, Jeff. We thought we had a wonderful life. We wanted for nothing, but we had to work for our things that we had, and our experiences were just fabulous. Roscoe Wilson, Hutchinson Junior High, Monterey High School, and then I finished, of course, the last semester of my senior year. I was over at Monterey High School, but just I can't imagine. And then we were in the same house from the time I was in kindergarten until I was a junior in high school. Brother and I shared a bedroom for all those years. And so you get to know yourself and your family a little better when you're in those types of environments, I think.
I'm curious, appreciate that. Where do you fall in the line of all of the kids?
I have an older brother, David,
okay,
and then 3 younger sisters, okay. Julie, Jill, and Suzanne.
Okay, so you were number 2.
I was number 2.
Okay.
And when it all shook out, they all went to Tech and graduated and moved on with their lives. And I was the only one left in Lubbock, and still am today. So getting out of school, when I got out of college and came back here to law school, my brother David was finished up at Tech, and he's an artist by trade, and he was in the Dallas area beginning his career and plying his trade. And then my sisters just married and moved off. And so I was the last guy standing from the children's standpoint.
Right. What was Rip like as a father?
He was, I would say, Jeff, he was pretty hard charging. He had to open the store up at 5 a.m. and he'd get home about 6. And a fond memory of mine was this. My mom would meet him at the door and make sure that he took his boots off because there was diesel and oil on. They had that certain aromatic flair to them
Yeah.
that she didn't really care to have in the house.
Right.
So that was his first move, was to take those boots off and come into the house. But he was a driven gentleman. I'll just say that about him. He had an idea what he wanted to do, and he was motivated to see it through. And so that to say it didn't rub off on me would have been a lie, to tell you the truth. But I didn't really get to know him, though, Jeff, until I came back and started working. I told people I worked for my dad for about 15 years or 20, and I worked with him for about 10 years in the business. But he was that was his personality, and the only person he was intimidated by was my mother.
There's a lot of marriages that way, don't you think?
Well, I'm one, that's for sure.
I know that my grandfather was intimidated by his you might remember
yes,
her.
oh my goodness.
Yes.
I mean, the Horn and Gladden, my dad would talk about them, and he held them in high honor because they were self-made and shirt sleeve, going to work and had a beautiful business. They had a beautiful business.
Right. Your dad was hard charging and all that. I know that you were hard charging youth as well, playing all the sports and all that. Did your dad coach you ever? Or do you
Yes. Yeah. Obviously, baseball was a big part of his life. He had played at Tech,
right,
and played some semi-pro ball, and so that was a big deal to him. He didn't discount the other sports. I played football and baseball in high school, but he didn't discount those other sports. But baseball was going to be the sport we were going to play, and so he coached us probably all the way through until Colt League, the 12, 13-year-old, American Legion, no. And then I played semi-pro with his team that he would sponsor, the Hubbers.
Right.
And that was really a fun experience. But that from about 11 or 12 years old, he stopped and handed me off to others, and that was probably in everybody's best interest. Probably.
Right.
But that's where I learned the game, was from my dad.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you develop and playing and played over at Lubbock High, and you decide your senior year to move over to play for Monterey High School and Coach Magel. And tell us a little bit about that experience and what that was like.
I don't know. I think it's as much my dad's idea as it was mine. If you really want to know the truth, I think he was. And we had just built a brand new house on 10th Street in the Coronado district. So I could have gone to Coronado too. Mm-hmm. But he and I talked about it and decided I'd go to Monterey. But I don't think he may have told Coach Magel that we were going to be moving over there, but that was probably the full extent of that conversation. I never talked to Coach Magel. I never approached him about it. I didn't ask permission really. And so here we have this brand new home. It's not a year old on 10th Street. Beautiful home. And I'm living in this little 1-bedroom or maybe 2-bedroom apartment where I can walk to Monterey High School just so I can go to school there. My mom's over there every night cooking dinner. My brother would stay with me. Sometimes Dad would stay over there because we lived in mortal fear that someone was going to come knock on the door. And if I wasn't there, they said, well, he's not really living there. And I was not going to risk eligibility of my teammates or myself by that. So we were faithful, believe it or not, in our residency. I'll say that.
As a fellow Monterey baseball player, at what point in the season did you think that you had signed up for maybe the wrong sport and thought you were on the track team instead of the baseball team?
That's interesting, Jeff, because I'd heard reputationally about that. I had dear friends, having gone to Hutchinson Junior High. Half of our class went to Monterey and half went to Lubbock High because of 34th Street, south and north. So I knew a number of them. In fact, my very best friend, Jim Killian, was on the team. And I would see Jimmy from just playing ball and seeing him in the summer and talking about that. I knew I was prepared for that. But the thing I missed out on was Coach Magel treated me very fairly, I will say, and probably more fair than he should have, quite frankly. And I did not get the negative experiences that just about everybody else on that team had grown up with at Monterey, because I was just there for a semester, and he didn't want to, I guess, waste his time on me doing that.
Right.
And I was what I was there. There wasn't going to be a big transformation, other than I had to learn to play another position. But for some reason, I enjoyed the trust he had in me, and that was really a significant aspect in my experience there at Monterey.
Yeah, and he played a huge part in my life as well. And I struggled. I told you this when we were preparing for the show, and I won't go through all that, but I really struggled the first part of my senior year after a football injury in our playoff football game. And he let me know about it, because, Horns weren't supposed to be that bad of a player, and got up there, but really taught me to swing the bat, in everything that I do, not just literally swing the baseball bat, but to swing the bat and go for it. And deeply appreciative of that man for teaching. I think he taught thousands of West Texans how to compete and how to attack life vigorously.
Well, for my sake, from my perspective, I would not have had the opportunities going forward in that sport but for him.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I owe that completely, unequivocally to Coach Magel.
And then you joined a great group of guys there that were already there playing as well, and you obviously bolstered their team, and y'all went on to win his first state title there at Monterey High School in 1972. Not to put too much of an age on this thing, but that was a neat experience, I'm sure.
It was unbelievable, Jeff, because we didn't know. We didn't start off great pre-conference before we got in, but then we just kind of rolled through the conference. We probably had one of the top 3 pitchers in the state, and the other 2 I got to play with at UT, quite frankly. But Donnie Moore, we rode him as far as he could take us.
Yeah, which was
all the way.
Yeah, something similar to our group too. In '96, Mark Martinez went 17-0.
Oh my goodness!
And it just unbelievable performance by guys like that.
Yeah.
But Donnie was something else.
You got to have those bell cows. You just have to. Yeah. Every team I ever played on, they existed because they were the ones that were going to be able to take you beyond what you could even dream or hope for.
So you have a great experience there, winning state, and tell us a little bit about how you ended up playing at the University of Texas next.
Well, when the season was over, Coach Magel said, "Do you want to play, Mark? Do you want to play in college?" And I said, "Yes, I really would." And he said, "Well, I can help you 2 places." And I was kind of surprised. He said, I can help you at Texas or Oklahoma. Didn't mention Tech. And so I said, well, if I had to choose between those 2, let's try Texas. So Donnie Moore and they flew us down there to Austin to have lunch and to visit with Coach Gustafson. And in retrospect, Coach Gustafson really wanted Donnie Moore. He could have taken or leaving me. I was not the reason. But he really wanted Donnie, and Donnie would have been the first African-American baseball player at the University of Texas in the history of that program. I don't think that happened until probably 4 or 5 years later, Jeff, but he really wanted Donnie. And Coach Gus's recruiting philosophy, he might go to San Antonio or to New Braunfels or maybe Houston to see a kid play, but he wasn't going to get too far from home, so he relied on scouts. Pro scouts to say, well, this kid can play or this guy can't play. So I guess I got a little bit of an endorsement from the scouts to send him down there, and I got a partial scholarship and was thrilled to do. I think he probably regretted when I thought he said, "Hey, Mark's not going to take this." And when I said yes, he probably went, "Oh no, what am I going to do now?" But it was a wonderful experience. On the plane ride back with Donnie, I knew good and well. He says, "Well, that was enjoyable, but I'm going to," he'd gotten drafted. Didn't think, apparently he wasn't going to sign with Boston, the Red Sox organization. So he said, "I'm going to go to Ranger Junior College." And interestingly enough, that next year, his freshman year at Ranger, they win the National Junior College Championship. Yeah. And he pitched probably in of the 7 games, I think he pitched in 5 of them in the World Series format that they had. Unbelievable. And not surprising.
Yeah. Then goes on pitching the majors.
That's right.
And all that.
Big league.
Big league career. You, don't play much, I think, your freshman year, and then end up playing more and more as you go along, and you help Texas win their first national title in the modern era in 1975. What do you remember from that experience?
Well, it started off a little slow, Jeff, for me. I didn't even get a uniform my freshman year. I was catching bat in practice, throwing bat in practice, and he had recruited 2 other catchers, one from Lufkin and one from Dallas, and both were better than I was defensively.
Yeah.
So I knew I was going to have to find another position to play, and so he put me in the outfield, and there were good players there. That the strength and the frustration of playing at UT is this: it's a great opportunity, but if you're in the lineup, you got to kind of produce, because there's somebody sitting on the bench that's as good or better than you are, that he'll just move. And he took a very professional approach. Lots of similarities between Coach Magel and Coach Gus, but Coach Gus treated that like a AA or AAA ball club, and if you couldn't play, he was going to find somebody else who did. And I knew good and well in my situation, if I didn't get a hit or produce or get a hit, at least a hit or 2, I knew I probably wasn't going to play. He was going to skip a game for me. Yeah. Other guys that were the day-to-day, the regulars, he'd give some deference to, but I was having to. I kind of had to prove myself regularly, and that was okay. That was okay. But it was a wonderful. Each year, he gave me a few more opportunities. Really, about a third of the way through the season, my sophomore year, he finally gave me a chance and got a couple of hits, and then I was kind of in the mix, and that it took off from there.
Yeah. I know that you spoke very fondly of all 3 of these gentlemen, but the opportunity to be raised by Rip Griffin, play for Coach Magel, who's one of the all-time winningest high school baseball coaches, Coach Gustafson, who set tons of records on the collegiate level. That's a pretty neat pathway for you.
Well, for sure. I can't imagine playing for better baseball men than Coach Magel and Coach Gus. They each had their respective strengths. One of the similarities was the emphasis on fundamentals. We had guys that we knew were going to, out of my class, 4 out of the 8 recruited played at not just professional baseball, played at the big league, in the big leagues. Yeah. So these guys were talented, and yet Coach Gus took nothing for granted. Fundamentals, just like Coach Magel. And he would just work and work and work. We'd get one day off during fall training to go to the Texas OU game. Otherwise, it was 6 days a week playing baseball, inter-squadding, doing fundamentals. So not only were there was a talented group, but we were fundamentally sound. I can remember my dad making this remark early on. He said, "Mark, just the precision in the way that y'all just take infield before the game." He said, "You're 3 runs ahead of anybody before they even start, because they look at you and say, well, we can't beat these guys." And most of the time that was correct.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But two different gentlemen, but similarities. Neither one of them were known for nurturing. Yeah. Okay, they took it they were very professional in how they did it, and you either performed or you didn't. And they were steeped in the fundamentals. Coach Magel out of the Cardinal organization, and I think Coach Gustafson I think he may have played the Cardinal organization too, believe it or not. So they were well versed in fundamentals and took a lot of the spring training tips and implemented them into preparing you to play to the very best of your ability. And there was a high level of expectation at Texas. They had the reputation, so there was the performance level needed to be at a high level.
And this was, we were a little bit removed from the NIL era back here in the mid 70s, and so you were going to school, wanted to go to law school. Yeah. What were you majoring in?
Well, I had the most worthless major I was political science major, because I knew, Jeff, for some reason, going down there, I just knew I wanted to go to law school. I didn't have visions. If it worked out, beautiful, but I didn't have visions of playing professional baseball. But if it worked out, beautiful, but I was going to go to law school. If I was going to do that, I had to have good grades to get in school, so I needed to take something I was interested in. But, you talk about that NIL deal.
Yeah.
If I'm so glad it wasn't. In effect, it'll cost me a fortune to play down there because I was going to have to pay people, to play probably. So that was I would have had the reverse NIL probably in my situation. But academically, great. I mean, the school academically was really good, and a few too many TAs I had that were trying to get their master's or doctorate instead of professors. But if you got in with a true full professor, you were going to get a good education. And I had the opportunity to study with some fascinating and fabulous teachers.
Right. You meet your wife?
Yes, I met Claudia down there as a sophomore. It wasn't a blind date, but one of my dear friends' teammates, his sister was in the same sorority as Claudia and decided she was going to try to set us up. And Claudia and I got off to a kind of a rocky start. We had one date after a baseball game, and I'd had a pretty good day that day. We played a doubleheader, and I was kind of tired, so we go out to dinner, and I take her home, and I'm dropping her off about 9 or 9:30. Well, this is just when the girls are coming out of the dorm to go out, not come in. They're looking at you. What are you doing? Well, he just dropped me off and said, and so she broke about the next 2 or 3 dates, Jeff. I don't guess she had a bunch of ants die on her or something. I don't know what happened, but she was. We got off to kind of a rocky start, but I guess I just wore her down. I don't know, but just a beautiful lady, and I'm honored to be married to her. But it was a great experience. And as a young girl, I ever dated in school.
Yeah. You graduate the University of Texas, come back here, go to law school, eventually get Claudia here. Tell us about that little transition.
That was an interesting little scenario. We got married halfway through law school's 3 years, so a year and a half in, at semester break, New Year's Eve of 1977, we get married. She got out of school and immediately went to work for Eastern Airlines, no longer in business, but she was a flight attendant for them and based out of Miami. So I would see her maybe once every 2 or 3 months, maybe. And so this long distance relationship, I think, was a struggle more for her than it was for me, because I was preoccupied with law school. And we ended up getting married over the semester break, and she goes back to Miami to finish flying. And in retrospect, she should have just stayed there till I finished law school, because she comes back here, doesn't know anybody, and I'm at the library from either in class or in the library from 8 till about midnight. I come home to eat dinner, and then I'm gone again. She doesn't know anybody. She said, "What am I doing here? This is kind of ridiculous." And I wouldn't have blamed her, but she hung in there. And now, having raised our family here, Jeff, I don't think you could. I'm not sure even a court order would be effective getting her out here now.
and her first time ever come here was like a big dust storm.
It was horrible. In high school, she came out here to visit, look at Tech, and she lands in a dust storm. She'd never been out here before as a young adult, and everything was brown. And then she had some day with a cowboy in a pickup truck. I don't think she'd ever even been in a pickup before. And she called her mom and said, "Look, I'm never coming back to this godforsaken place." And on our wedding night, her mother slips her a little note, and it's those words quoted specifically, knowing she was going to end up in Lubbock, Texas.
Y'all have 3 beautiful children, Lauren, Emily, and Jeff, and raised a great family here.
This is a great place to raise a family. I would put it, I've not been other places. I get it. You've traveled more than I have or lived in other places, but I can't imagine a better place to raise a family than Lubbock, Texas.
Yeah. So you got your family going, get Claudia here. Before you decide to transition into the family business, you did pass the bar exam and you're an attorney.
That's a miracle in and of itself.
What is your claim to fame as an attorney?
My legal career was consisted of about 4 years of primarily litigation, trying lawsuits, but I'd got my license, and I had it for about 6 weeks. And the senior partner in the firm, we were going to try a criminal case that we were appointed on. This guy couldn't afford it, so it was court appointed. And we go and try the case, and the senior partner, we pick a jury, and he cross-examines the first witness, and then he says, "Mark, I got a hearing. You need to take it from here." And he had not warned me about that. He had not told me about that. So once I picked myself up off the floor, and start doing this, it was excruciating, Jeff.
And it wasn't like he gave you a winning case.
No, they had pictures of the guy. It was a lay down. And John Monford, Senator Monford was on the other side because he knew this was a lay down case. Well, we get through it all, and the jury's out about 17 seconds, long enough to elect a foreman and take a vote. So they give him life because this was his third felony conviction, and under state statute at that time, the jury only had two options if you were found guilty, 50 years or life. And they opted for life on this guy. And I'm shocked they didn't send another note out to the judge saying, "Hey, can you give that young lawyer about 30 days? He needs some work." I mean, that wasn't very good. So my claim to fame is my first client got life, and that was the high point of my legal career.
So 4 years in, you decide to go to your dad and want to transition to the family business, running truck stops, and we'll get into the growth of that business. But what spurred that decision?
I think, I don't know. I think the Lord moves in mysterious ways, Jeff, and if I can say that, because I was not disenchanted, but the law practice was not what I had envisioned, especially what I was doing. I wasn't miserable, but I wasn't getting a sense of fulfillment that I'd hoped. And part of it was my own fault, I'm sure, but I looked up and I said, "David's gone. None of the girls are in the business. If he gets hit by a bus, we are in trouble here. I mean, I don't know." And so I said, "You know what? I'm just going to go see if I can go to work with him." So I went in and said, "Dad, I'd like to transition out of what I'm doing. Can I come to work?" I asked him for a job, and he agreed, and best decision I ever made. Got to work with my dad every day for 40 plus years and learned a lot from him. I learned what to do, and frankly, from him, I learned some things I wouldn't do. Okay. And that's just the nature of the relationship, but it was the best decision I ever made. And we were building the truck stop chain. We were Freightliner dealers. We had wholesale fuel business and lubricant business. So he was stacking those bricks up on his wall of accomplishments and business. So it was a thriving going concern when I got there. I had nothing to do with building it out.
Yeah.
But it was going, and so it was a real education for me. And I was still able to use a lot of my legal training to help. Did all the contracts. I even tried a couple of cases, represented the company, and did a little better.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. At least I didn't have to serve hard time on those, but did a little better, and it was just fulfilling. And we had our rough patches just because of we were, for example, Freightliner dealers in Odessa, Texas, and crude goes to $6. Well, we had these autocar trucks, big. These were strictly designed for the oil business,
right,
for the oil patch, and boy, those were sitting out there, and that floor plan interest was running, and there was some financially tough days, but my dad had found a way. He could find a way, and I learned a lot about resilience in that situation, and ultimately we grew the business, sold the truck stops in 2005 to a public company, and then about 5 to 7 years earlier, I'd started another wholesale fuel company with fuel terminals, shipping on the pipelines to the west out of the Gulf, and we had terminals in Phoenix and Las Vegas and Lubbock, and so we were building another business paralleling the truck stop business that I was really more engaged in at that point in time, and ended up selling that in 2019. So it was a fun experience, a wild ride in some respects.
You said some of the growth, just such, unbelievable growth and, doing something over here. We're counting on this over there. Managing cash flow, I think, is what you were really talking about.
Yes, managing it down to the minute. Dad was well versed in about when those checks were going to hit the bank, and we'd cover them. But it was they probably had 30 seconds to spare, and the money was there. But it was he had his sights set on what he was going to do, and many times we would get a little ahead of ourselves financing wise, and he'd just go ahead and start the project out of the petty cash box instead of having some interim or permanent financing. And we'd ultimately get it. But boy, those were interesting days building those things. But it was I loved his concept, and I think it resonated with the traveler on the interstate highway.
Yeah. The true entrepreneur. I mean, because we work with business owners here at Mass Rider Capital, and lots of people have great ideas and all of that. But really, I mean, until you experience those types of things, my uncle used to call it signing both sides of a paycheck.
Yes.
Till you write yourself a paycheck, and until you endorse your own paycheck, you really don't quite grasp the magnitude of what it's like running a business.
Yes. And people, I think those who are truthful with themselves say that those relationships and the people you surround yourself with are really your greatest assets in any, whether it's a family business or a public business. And Dad was very, very, very astute, I think, in the way his hiring practices, but he had this heart. I don't know how many guys he gave second or third chances to come back and try again, and that was not lost on me, Jeff.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, you do these divestitures with the truck stop and then your wholesale fuel business, which was wildly successful as well. And, do that, towards COVID and all of that. And then, embark on transitioning really the Rip Griffin companies into more of a family office, a legacy, business with a foundation, all those types of things. Talk to us a little bit about that transition and what that's been like.
Yeah, it's really been a lot of fun, and it's been, I guess, Jeff, not the day-to-day pressure that you would feel in running that type of an operation, a little more stabilized, if you will, and predictable to some degree. But I thought when we sold those businesses that my responsibilities to my brothers and sisters were going to go away. But the way my dad had the estate plan set up, I guess I'm going to work for him for the rest of my life. He had me trustee on some of the trusts, and my brother and I, and then we just by nature of the fact that we were handling the businesses, we started this family office, and son Jeff, I recruited him. He was a lawyer and had been practicing law in Midland and was at a firm in Fort Worth, and these transactions were coming on. And I said, this would be a great education if he's interested. And I said, Jeff, I'd love for you to come work with me and start with these transactions, because they were fairly sophisticated, Jeff, and complicated. And I thought, he's going to get a great education on this. I'd love for him to be with me. And I wasn't sure what his answer was going to be. And he said, Dad, this is what I always wanted to do. So that was, I excelled on that one, and it's just been so much fun, and working with you guys, the experience, the opportunities that with credible people of integrity to be able to build your investment portfolio in partnership with guys that you think the world of, you and Dusty. That's just been fantastic.
Yeah, well,
it really has.
Well, appreciate it. We think the world of Jeff. It's been great working with him, and look forward to working with him for many years to come here. One question I do want to ask is, you have the unique perspective. I've worked with several family businesses, and I've worked with a lot of investors that are either family offices or whatnot, and they're passing it on down to the next generation. But you have the unique perspective that you did work for your father and with your father for 40 years, and now you're in his role, and Jeff is in your role.
Yes.
I'm curious what your perspective is on that and how you go about doing that. Probably feeling a little bit the way Rip used to feel, but also not wanting to forget how you felt
Yeah.
when you were the son. So I'm curious what your thoughts are there.
Well, you can't have those experiences and not be changed or influenced by them. And I think the aspect of dads is patience with some people, not with everybody, don't get me wrong, but his patience was not lost on me in that regard. His risk-taking, measured, but still risk.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't risk-averse, I'll just say that. That's played a little bit of a role, but then also trust, Jeff. At the end of the day, he when he was riding off into the sunset, and it was difficult to get him off that horse. That's another story.
Yeah.
But he needed to be. But the trust he had in me is what I'm trying to impart to Jeff. That I trust him, and I think that plays a meaningful role in any young person's life. If they feel the trust of the person they're working with or for, I think it enables them to do things that they may not have ever thought they were even capable of. So that's a big word in our family and in this family business relationship is the trust factor.
Coaching them a little bit, back to an athletic day of Coach Magel expecting that you could be something that maybe you didn't even think you could be at that point in time.
Well, I can say that for sure for me.
Well, me too. Digging a little deeper here, past your experience, like who were some of your early mentors besides the three people that we've talked about, and what did you learn from them?
Obviously, coaches, teachers have profound impacts, and there's four people that have been influential in my life, and I'll start with the obvious one. You don't live and work with a fella, my dad, without being influenced by him. And I took all the good that he did and was able to distill and filter out some of the things that I remember telling myself, I respect Dad for doing it, but that's not the way. When I get to be, if I'm in charge, we're probably going to do it a little different way. It wasn't a knock on him as much as it was through our experience. I was developing my own set of strategies and persona, if you will. So my dad, Coach Magel and Coach Gustafson were profoundly influential on me. And they gave me a chance. They trusted me. They knew what they were doing. But Jeff, you know this too. When you're successful, you see the world differently. Mm-hmm. You know it's challenging, but you've also been successful. So you have a certain, not arrogance, not ego, but a certain confidence. I've been through this. I can figure this out. We're going to figure this out and get it done. You and I both were in those experiences, and they change you. They do. And I'm not trying to be egotistical about it, but when someone trusts you and has confidence in you, it stays within you, and it influences you and impacts you in every facet of your life.
Yeah.
And then one more.
Yeah, go for it.
My third grade teacher, Mrs. Thelma Laughlin at Roscoe Wilson. To say I was a struggling student was an understatement. My first grade teacher told my mom, he said, I'm not sure he can make it in the second grade. I don't know if he can move up. And my mom, in true Geneva Griffin fashion, said, look, I got 4 other kids at home. I can't stay. He ain't gonna stay here 1 year longer than he needs to. You're moving him. I don't care what you think. If he flunks out, I'm not gonna blame it on you. But you ain't holding him back, please. You got to do it for me to preserve my sanity. But third grade, I was really struggling. I remember one day, Miss Laughlin, everybody said, Mark, would you stay after class? And I'll try not to get emotional about this, but I was struggling. And she said, Mark, sit down. She said, listen to me. I've seen what you can do. You can do this work. You're going to be okay. You just need to just relax and let it come to you. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. I was never the same after that. Just the words. My mom and dad could say it. That you hear it, out of one ear, but when you hear it from a different side, sometimes it resonates with you. And Miss I'll always cherish that conversation with Miss Laughlin, because she's the first person who said, I believe in you. You can do it. And that changed me.
Yeah.
Jeff, it changed me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Lubbock ISD has had a ton of great teachers and great programs, and I know that you served the school district a long time, and I'm very thankful. I had a little different route. I went to Honey Elementary, went to Matthews. I drove by the other day. Building's not even there anymore.
Yes.
Went to Evans, was an Evans Eagle, and then a Monterey Plainsman.
Yes.
But very thankful for all of the teachers that, supported my life as well. And they have a bigger impact than they even imagine sometimes.
And that's the reason anybody, I think, if they're truthful with themselves, were shaped and formed by those teachers who took that extra care. And my goodness, it's an honored profession that we've allowed our culture to compromise, and it's unfortunate, in my opinion. Their heart is not to be compromised, but they've forced them into it because of other things. But that's another conversation.
Yeah. At MRC, we focus on working with business owners and operating a lot of businesses and those types of things. What are some of the lessons that you've learned specifically about managing people that you've learned in your times of operating these businesses?
Well, I think, first of all, you've got to understand who you're dealing with, Jeff. And everybody brings some baggage with them to the job, okay? So you need to understand the little nuances. I'm not saying that you try to be everybody's dear friend. You can't afford to do that. And I never, while Dad would socialize with some of the managers and some of the office, his VPs and stuff, I never did that. And I respect him for it, but I felt like I needed to have an arm's length relationship with them. Not that I didn't respect them and enjoy their company, but I just didn't see my style being that way. But I think you need to understand who you're dealing with, and I think have the willingness to listen. Mm-hmm. Most entrepreneurs are not, they don't pride themselves on their listening ability, but the truly good ones are willing to do that. To set their ego aside a little bit. Am I missing something here? Mm-hmm. And to have trusted, I think it's important you have some trusted, you got 3 or 4 people within your company that you can go talk to. I think that's very, very important. And they don't necessarily have to be at the managerial level. And I know that, I saw that through my dad. And you need to be flexible. We probably had the first women general managers of truck stops in the entire country. But Dad saw the value of these people. He knew they were ladies by nature, females, detail-oriented. Mm-hmm. And we did famously with really good female managers. He wasn't stuck in a sexist environment. He was willing to listen, willing to kind of change a little bit, maneuver for the good of the customer. But boy, he was customer-centric, Jeff. They came first. And we'd worry about everything else a little bit later, but we're going to make sure we're going to take care of that because we might not have a second chance.
Yeah. Sticking on the business side of things, from an entrepreneur's perspective, what are the 3 qualities, and they may be the same qualities, that you just, mentioned, but what are the 3 qualities that make a great entrepreneur in your mind?
Well, obviously, I think resilience. You've got to have the ability to take a punch, okay?
Because it's coming.
It's coming, whether you want it or whether you see it or not.
Yeah.
You're going to have to take a punch. I think, secondly, you've got to be comfortable with who you are. There's got to be an internal sense of integrity as to who you are. You've got to be able to look in the mirror and be able to face yourself and take care of yourself, too. And then finally, I think there's got to be, I've learned this over time, the value of patience, Jeff. It's not going to happen overnight. And so many times the things I've tried to rush have ended up being worse than before I started that even. And so those would be 3 that I would say have influenced me as much as anything. And I'm not saying I'm perfect on any of those regards, but when I implement those strategies, I seem to do a little better.
Yeah. That's hard for Christian people sometimes. Like, I fight that too, of like, I want something to happen on Jeff's timeline.
Exactly.
But you know what?
Yeah.
it doesn't always go that way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The good Lord has a timeline,
yes,
and it's going to be on His timeline.
Yes, that's right. And you've got to have that. I think you've got to have that resilience to be able to ride. Sometimes you got to stay at the party a little longer than what you thought. But at the end of the day, I think many times you see, and in time you understand that and you appreciate that, and you understand you're comfortable with it.
Yeah,
you're comfortable with it, at peace with it.
Yeah. Talking more about this area, you went to, lived in Austin for 4 years and then moved back, and you've been here a long time. You've seen really a lot of change in Lubbock and West Texas, and really Lubbock, truly becoming a big hub of the South Plains. I'm curious, it's a great place to raise a family, all that, but what are your thoughts on Lubbock and looking forward from where we're at today?
From a community standpoint, I think when I was on the school board, it was very interesting. Families would move into town, and depending on what their level of interest was, for example, if they said, okay, my son's really interested in baseball, where do I go? Well, you go to Monterey, okay, for example, and if you can. But if they didn't have this mindset before they got here, it's not going to take them long to understand that this is a place, and West Texas in general, I'm not singling out Lubbock per se, but West Texas in general is made up of people who are not braggadocious on their own. West Texas people do not toot their own horn very well. Okay, they have a certain reluctance to do that. It's not that they don't have confidence. It's not that they're not talented. It's not that they don't have integrity. But by nature, we just don't do that very well. There's the bigger cities. There's other places where it's more prevalent and more prominent. But out here, we just take care of our business, and we expect everybody else to take care of their business, quite frankly. But we're not gonna brag about it. And that was one of the biggest transitions I felt like when I was on the board at Tech. That I said, we need to tell our story. We don't need to be taking a back seat to anybody. But that's not our nature. And I really appreciated that. I don't know how many handshake deals my dad did. As a lawyer, I said, Dad, we need a contract. We don't need that. The guy gave me his word. I know him. We're going to go do it. A quick story, if I can.
Yeah.
We had the Whisperwood development out north of town there off of 4th Street. And we struggled in that development. We thought we knew what we were doing. We didn't know what we were doing. And so Delbert came by. He and Rip were friends, and they came by and said, Mark and I won't buy this. And so he brought Mark over for a meeting at the office, and he says, Mark, you and Mark go in the other office. Delbert and I will be out in a little bit. So we have this nice conversation, and Mark said, I can only imagine what's going on in there. 15 minutes later, said, okay, we got a deal. We're closed tomorrow, Tuesday or Wednesday the next day. And it's $1 million deal, and we closed without a contract. And, of course, the title company was beside themselves. We got a contract. We can't do this. Figure out a way. Okay, we'll scratch something out. They did it on a handshake. And that was, I still think our culture has not allowed us to do that, but I still think West Texas people are capable of it.
Yeah, that's a great.
On a handshake. And that means something, I think. And I think it is indicative and a characteristic of this area of the state in which we live.
Well, to that point, I mean, Texas Tech specifically is telling their story a lot now on a national stage, and doing that not only in sports but in academia and the medical center. It's a great time to be a Red Raider, and the two go hand in hand with Lubbock and all of that.
Absolutely.
But I know you served two terms on the Texas Tech system Board of Regents, and then the last one, finished up your career there as the chairman of the board. What are some of your memories of serving on that board, and what was that like?
Well, I think the biggest indicator for me was the leadership style. And Ted Mitchell was the chancellor. He was a physician by nature, so you knew he had some detail to him. But what he did was implement a culture there, Jeff, that resonated with me and appealed to me, and I think impacted the board profoundly. We had a culture, and there was some integrity, there was going to be honesty, there was going to be community, and we were not going to compromise on those. And sometimes it impacted our decisions. We had to make some hard decisions while we were there, and sometimes as chairman, you've got to do some things that's maybe impacts you more, but it's for the good of the group. But I will say this, Jeff, I've served on a number of boards, and that board I served on my last 2 years was the finest board I've ever served on in my life. I just can't find anything to compare to it. But the honesty, the integrity, the character of the people we got to serve with, and it manifests itself, I think, in some of the things we were able to do because we trusted each other.
Yeah.
And we had a leader who was saying, let's go do this. And so Dusty was a part of that, and I think in many ways he was the North Star of that board.
Yeah.
And I was honored to be a part of that.
Yeah.
It really was, in a time where we were able to do some things and get some stuff done and have friends and partners that would say, come on, we can make this happen.
Yeah. Dusty's commented a time or two too. It's a really unique board in the sense that you have usually made up of a lot of people that have made decisions for their businesses, and that you come together to make a unifying decision. May not always be unifying decision, but sometimes there is shaking ego at the door. Sometimes there's not, but it's a really unique situation.
Yes, it is. And you've got, like I said, you've got 8 other people who are successful in their own right.
Right.
So you, as chairman, sometimes you've got to kind of meld and mold and kind of bring these coalitions together with varying degrees of interest and varying degrees of success to get to the higher calling. What is the higher calling? What's the ultimate decision that we're trying to get to here? Yeah. You may not agree with it or may have problems with it, but is it for the best? Is it in the best interest of the institution?
Right.
And we had great leadership on the campus level.
Yeah.
Our President Skuvanek, at Angelo State, at the Health Sciences Center, at Midwestern State, we had quality people leading the charge, and that makes, when you're not having to manage them, Jeff, that gives you the freedom and liberates you to do things that are for the best of the whole institution, because you're not having to manage around a personality.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. The one more thing I want to mention, you and David Alderson started the Alderson Griffin Center for Family Business and Entrepreneurship. And I'll hear the story one day on how Alderson got his name in front of yours, but we don't have to do that today. But what is the mission that you're trying to serve there for the university?
David and I had a common vision, and it just happened. It was by happenstance. We were at the country club. We had a downtown development meeting, and David was meeting Lisa, and Claudia was meeting me out at the country club for dinner. We weren't together, and I saw him and said, let's go over there and sit down and have dinner. Well, I sit down, and David says, Mark, I want to share something with you. I've got this vision. And he started laying out for this family business center and entrepreneurship. And I said, David, that's what I've wanted to do. I had spent a week in the mid-'80s at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania on succession in the family business, and it was so profoundly impactful to me. When I get out, I said, if I ever can do it, I'm going to, at the academic level, I want to expose kids, not to run them into the business or run them out of the business, but expose them to the business and the dynamic of dealing with an entrepreneur. Their mom or dad, their uncle or aunt, their grandma, their grandpa, whoever it is, that founder, because there's a certain dynamic there. There's a certain psychology there. And I think David and I, growing up in the family businesses, we saw that. Well, anyway, I said, okay, what are we looking for to find? He said, well, I'm going to do this. I'm trying to raise this. I said, okay, I got the other half. And we shook hands on it. And it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. He's a great partner, and Tech has been a great vessel for us to be able to develop this. Jeff, I couldn't be prouder of that organization and the guy we've got running it at the school level. And what the beauty of it is, while it's housed in the business school, we are getting kids from all over campus, architecture, performing arts, engineering, that are coming into these classes. We've got a certificate program where they can learn and understand the dynamics of family, and they get to hear from business leaders like you that can talk about the family business and what it's about. So I couldn't be more happier.
When you're just getting started, too. I mean, it is. Y'all have had some wonderful speakers there, and I mean, it's been. That program, what it's going to look like in 10, 15 years, is going to be off the charts.
We want to be a resource, not just in West Texas, not just in the tech system. We want to be a resource way beyond that for people looking to say, I've got this family business. I can't even talk to my kids about it. I don't know what to do. Or my kids are saying, Dad won't listen. What do I do? I don't understand Dad what he's doing. And we bring them together and in a, granted academic, but there's a lot of practicality too, because we bring in speakers who come and talk the practical aspects. Right. There's always going to be that academic side, but we want the practical side too. And I think if we can blend those together, we've got something special.
Right. Well, appreciate all your thoughts and stories. You're such a fantastic storyteller, but we do have one segment to go.
Okay.
Are you ready to enter the Around the Horn?
I'm sitting down.
All right. These are quick hitters. Some of them might not be quick hitters, but you haven't seen any of these. So we're going to come out of the gate swinging here. So get you a little drink of water here as we get started.
Okay.
But if I cut your forearm with a knife, are you going to bleed red and black or burn orange?
Red and black. I'm a terrible ex-student. I enjoyed my time down there, Jeff. It was wonderful. I wouldn't have traded it for the world, but that was not me.
Yeah.
I was ready to go. I made some of my dearest friends, teammates, friends, still dear, lifelong friends together. Special time. I'm proud of my time there, but Lubbock is my home, and Texas Tech is my school.
Yeah. Where's your favorite place to travel to?
Where I can go, and Claudia says, Mark, you're different down here. We've got a place at Horseshoe Bay and a lake house down there, and I really enjoy down there because I can just kind of turn the volume down a little bit and exhale and relax. And I've got good friends. David Alderson lives right across the street, has a house right across the street from me. I didn't know that when I first got the house, but that would be, if I had to put someplace consistently where I like to go, that's where I love to go. Golfing's great restaurants. Close enough to Austin to see some of my friends, but I can get out of there too.
Yeah. What is one talent you wish you did have? And you got a lot of talents, but what's one maybe that you
I wish I was better math-wise. I was never a good math student. And people ask me why. I said, I don't know, but I said, because of my personality, I acted out a lot in class. And I said, it's hard to learn algebra standing out in the hall. Okay, let me just say that. I wish I was a little more schooled in math, and I wish I'd have stayed playing the piano. My mother started me with piano lessons, and there was a bay window, and here I am with Mrs. Webb, and there's this big bay window at her house when I'm trying to play Swans on the Lake and learn my scales. And here I had two dear friends that they did it to antagonize me. They'd get a football or and they were just playing catch right out there in front of me and just making me watch it while I was taking let. And finally I said, Mom, can I move on from? We don't use the word quit very often, but I said, can I move on from piano lessons? Finally, I just beat her down. I'm sorry. I wish she'd said, no, you're going to stick through this, because I think I would have enjoyed being able to play an instrument.
Yeah. What is one thing people would be surprised to know about you?
I enjoy teaching Sunday school.
Yeah.
I'm at a church in a class right now where I teach three Sundays a month, and out of the 4, and it does me more good than it does them, but I might not strike somebody as being somebody who likes to do that, but I've done it for a long, long time, and it's part of kind of who I am, and like I said, I get more out of it than I'm pretty sure than anybody sitting there listening to me.
You were telling me, preparing for this, that you actually you enjoy going and listening to other sermons and exploring that and looking at it, researching, and they don't really give you a curriculum. You just come up with your own curriculum, but you really enjoy doing all of that.
But also, to quote that noted philosopher Bum Phillips, everything I know I learned from somebody else. Okay, so that's a blessing to me, and it does me more good. But it's if you're going to call yourself a believer, maybe you ought to be engaged in it to the full extent. So I guess maybe it's not out of guilt, but I sure get a lot of satisfaction out of it.
Yeah. What's your favorite Tech memory?
You're gonna think this is really weird. This was back in the Coliseum days, and Tech was playing Texas at the Coliseum and was behind by there was 2 minutes left and they were down by 10. So my friend Steve Cryer, who's a UT alumnus, we say, let's go down to the Brookshire Inn, or not Brookshire, but they're on Broadway, and go get something to eat. This game's over. So we're going by there, and we leave the game early, and we're listening to it on the radio. And Tech starts pressing, and they start catching up, and they start catching up. And then they end up beating them. I don't know if it was in overtime, but they end up, and they were down by 10 points with less than 2 minutes to go, and they end up winning the ball game. And I got a lot of quiet satisfaction out of that. My friend Steve was a little more devastated than I was, but how weird is that? But that's kind of a favorite memory of mine.
Yeah,
it really is. I've had so many experiences, but that's one that kind of sticks out in my mind.
Yeah, no, all of the victories against them are a lot of fun. I remember as a kid, Tech won in triple overtime, 128-125 in the Coliseum.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember that game or not, but
yes,
that was
crazy.
It
was wild, and the Coliseum was, it was like sitting in your living room watching a ball game. Very compact, and the atmosphere was unbelievable. But it's unbelievable at the Spirit Arena too.
Yeah, no,
it really is. But
you believe we've been in there 25 years now?
I know it.
It's hard to believe.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is. But anyway, that's a Tech memory.
Yeah. All right. Last question here on this. You got to give me a great Coach Magel story. People want to hear a good Coach Magel story. So give us one that we can tell on the podcast.
Well, this one. Okay. Well, I'm going to try this one and we'll see.
Yeah.
Donnie and a couple of other guys, one of the Saturday nights we decided to go out, and they ended up at a club. And at least one of them was another baseball player, and may have been another friend, may have been two players, I can't remember. But they get into a scuffle, and Donnie throws a guy through a plate glass window. And somehow, I don't know if they call the cops or somehow Coach Magel's aware of it, and so he calls the guys in, and he throws one of the guys off the team, another baseball player off the team, not Donnie. And I wasn't there, so I don't know all the facts. This is what I heard. So about 30 years later, we're at a baseball reunion, and I'm saying, Coach, do you think you made the right decision there on that? And he goes, well, Mark, I may have thrown the wrong guy off the team, but Donnie was not going short of, getting indicted for murder. He was going to be on the team no matter what. And the second one was this. We're getting ready to go play Houston Bel Air, state championship game. Been a rain delay, and we were kind of edgy and antsy, ready to get going. And he gets us all in the dugout, and he goes, well, you guys, I don't know if we got a chance or not. Y'all just go do the best we can. And I mean, everybody was mad, pissed off the way we don't have a chance. And a lot of us thought, like, maybe we did have a chance, but that was just his motivation. That was his, how he was. And I mean, we were ready to run through a brick wall just because he had insulted us. We felt like by saying that.
Yeah. He had a weird way of, it wasn't weird, it was just his way of getting the whole team to band together, basically to defeat him in a way, to make you play your best and all of that. And it was awesome. So I'll tell one quick story. Mark Martinez, our stud pitcher, our Donnie Moore, the day before the regional final to see who was going to Austin, Mark does not come to practice. And me and a collection of 4 or 5 other people would always go throw bullpens, and Coach Magle would pretend to be interested when we would go throw a bullpen, but he didn't care, And I
don't think that's the case.
Yeah. Well, I went down there. I was the last one to throw a bullpen, and I was like, Coach, I finished my bullpen, and I looked right at him, and I said, hey, Mark's not here. I mean, who's going to pitch tomorrow with Mark not showing up for practice? And Coach Magle goes, do you want to pitch tomorrow? And I was like, no, I'd really prefer Mark. He goes, if Mark's on the bus, Mark's going to pitch. And I was like, oh man, I was like, what a great answer,
And this isn't a Coach Magle story, but I can't let you go without sharing this one with you. And your daddy will vouch for me on this one. But a couple of our players, I'm not going to name names, but they decided after we won the state championship, they had somehow found somebody, and they bought a case of beer.
Yeah.
And they were hiding it in the bathtub of their hotel room. And Coach Dudley comes by to check he checked on us, make sure we were in the rooms, and everybody was there, but they had covered it up or pulled the curtain or something, so they didn't quite finish the beer. And they were a little tight-fisted, so they just put what was left in their suitcases. So here's this beer sitting in, and all of a sudden we're driving back from Austin on a bus, and it's a little warm down in the bowels of the bus. And about Slayton, all of a sudden we start hearing this pop, 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 pop. Well, it was the beer exploding in this guy's suitcase. So I said, this is going to be fun. So we get off the bus, and one of the players says, hey, Mark, would you go ask Coach Dudley a question, or Coach Mayo? I need them distracted for a second so I can get my suitcase. So he goes and grabs his suitcase, and he's running to his car, and this stream of fluid is flowing out of the back of his suitcase. I don't think there was a lot I don't think there was a lot of beer left by the time he got to his car, but that was a fun, great story.
Yeah, that's great.
And Coach Magle, we had to tell him about it. He had no idea, and that was another one of those 30 years later when the statute of limitations is run, that we could tell him about.
Oh yeah, no, he's been great. Well, Mark, I really appreciate you joining today. You've been great for the Heights of Victory. Been great for Mass Rider. Really enjoy working with you and Jeff. And thank you for all you've done for this community and for Texas Tech. And I know the people out here will gain a lot from today's episode. So we appreciate you being here.
It was an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Mark's a great story. His family is a great story, and he and the companies they built with Rip Griffin Companies, and now their family office as they carry on the Griffin legacy. And we're just really appreciative for Mark to be here today to share his wisdom with us. If you have a comment, you can leave it below, or you can send us an email at theheightsofvictory@massrider.com. We really appreciate you tuning in for today's episode, and we'll see you next time on the Heights of Victory.